Are you growing a team, and are you just really stuck in the management function of all the people? Oftentimes when I start to work with a company, their org chart is really flat and there's a lot of individual contributors all reporting up to the founder. And it's a challenge to detangle some of that stuff. And I've actually heard management team be referred to as margin killers. And I think the reason why management feels like it's a margin killer is because we don't know how to lead our team or effectively manage a team of managers or even a team of doers in a way that feels like it's not costing us a ton of time or a ton of money. Now, of course, my big thing is transparent operations, right? Having your systems and your processes in place to support your people and be able to allow them to get amazing results for your business. Now, that is a prerequisite, in my opinion. Having something set up that your team can come into, understand what's expected of them, understand how to get results really quickly, where to check when projects are due, and what the timeline looks like, and what tasks are involved. That, to me, are the prerequisites. I find that folks make a couple of critical mistakes when they start to hire a team. First, they don't do the prerequisites, right? They don't do the things that we know are necessary to make sure that team members thrive, that they stick with the organization, that they feel supported, that things feel really, really clear. What we end up doing is we end up hiring somebody to, let's just say, manage our social media. And then they're managing our social media and also creating all of the systems and processes around social media management, right? So we're kind of like snake oil salesmen to our team because they are hired for a job that they're only doing 50% of. The other 50% is getting your shit together. So what you want to do is make sure that you are clear with your team first and foremost about what is expected of them in the form of documentation, right? What do we do? How do we do it? When do we do it? And why do we do it, right? Really, really, really simple. And you want to position that in front of your team in documentation, in your system setup, and make sure that things feel nice and clean for them. If you don't have a lot of available bandwidth or have developed something like this in the past, it might feel a little bit slippery. You might be like, well, what do I even make for a new team member coming in who's managing my social media? The biggest thing that you can do is you can start to centralize key performance indicators. One of the biggest mistakes, beside not having a clear job description and having the available information that your teammate needs to go in, check the boxes, follow the SOPs, is that there aren't clear outcomes, right? So how much is this person expected to grow our audience? How much is, how often, are they supposed to be posting on our social media, right? Like those types of things are really slippery for some founders to figure out. And what ends up happening is when expectations are unclear, either they go in a direction that wasn't sanctioned, right? And then the relationship starts to get tense, or they just don't do anything, right? They need to be micromanaged, and they need to be in a position where, you're, really checking in with them and asking if they've gotten content out or they've created content or whatever that looks like for you specific to this social media management example. But I think for the most part, what we want to say is that they need information on how to do their job and when, and they need to understand what outcome that is supposed to be producing that you guys can objectively consider in your one-on-one meetings, in your group meetings, whatever that looks like for you guys behind the scenes, on how they're doing in their job. So at the end of the day, everybody wants to understand that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, that they're doing a good job or creating the outcomes that are mutually beneficial to both. And it's really, really hard to have a feelings party every single time we have a monthly one-on-one or, in our group sessions, right, with our team. So management starts with clarity and specifics around outcomes, right? We understand that we can have a healthy conversation about that. So a couple of the things that you can do to prepare for a new team member. We talked about documentation. We talked about key performance indicators. Something that is not very largely talked about, to be totally honest, but is a huge factor is make sure that you can afford them. I know a lot of business owners who don't actually know whether or not they can afford a team member that they've just recently brought on. They're like, oh, well, we need some help here and this person's rate is this or whatever. So we're going to hire them in and we're going to see if they can give me some time. And that's a fine plan, at least in the interim, but you need to be very specific about whether or not your business can afford a new player on the team, especially a person who's going to be in a management capacity or somebody who's, in that like $40 to $50 an hour range, who's going to come in and like actually be doing a lot of great work for your company. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be as intentional with lower dollar per hour, contributors, but I think that it's very, very important to make sure that we can afford this, because what it's going to do is it's going to put undue stress on that role. It's going to basically be a perform or die type of situation, and it's going to be really, really challenging to justify a training experience or, a little bit of a delayed gratification in them producing results, because that does happen in a training process, right? You get somebody in and they're not going to be firing on all cylinders on day one. We need to make sure that we have a lot of clarity around what we can and cannot afford when it comes to team. The next big thing is assembling a training experience for them. So in this example, I want to make sure that you are taking your standard operating procedures and anything that they need to be doing inside of their role and organizing them in a way that makes sense to train. So I'm actually currently onboarding a new executive assistant, and the very first thing I knew that was going to be critical for her to do is schedule on my calendar. Managing my calendar and making sure that I'm showing up for meetings and I've got everything I need for those meetings and that folks are available to be with me when we have our originally scheduled times, or if they can't be available, that we get them, slotted into the next best available time for both of us. That is something that is a big administrative headache on my plate that I've had, frankly, for a little while. And it's huge because I know that that's going to be domino number one that needs to fall. Once we understand scheduling, then we can start to crack open all of the available, kind of conversations and things that I have open in email and in DMs and all of those things, right? So that they can manage who needs to kind of make it past, round one into my calendar, into my personal life and meet with me for lunch or something like that, right? So it starts to build on one another. So thinking about what they need to do, when they need to do it, why they need to do it, right? What are all the kind of library of SOPs or resources that this person might need? What are the key performance indicators that make them successful, right? Can we afford them? So that's the next one. And then, the final one is making sure that we have a nice, clear, linear amount of training for them to go through. I like personally attaching a 4-week timeline on training. Everyone should be really feeling good about a person who comes into your business by about month 1. If we have some of those inklings where we're like, oh man, this person's really behind, or they're not getting up to speed as quickly as we thought, or maybe they're actually meeting expectations way faster than we thought, then we can start to kind of move that in the directions that it needs to go. But at the end of the day, managing a team all comes down to how you manage yourself and how you show up in your business, right? Because we all lead by example. So this is a kind of final thing I will say, and I know that it might be a little bit confronting, so I would encourage you to reflect and consider this. But if you are in a position where you are managing and growing a team and you are struggling to show up to meetings on time, have terrible response time on your emails, or anything administratively and how you carry yourself in the business, I would suggest and really encourage that you re-examine that, because how we do these things in our business trickles down directly to our team. We need to show them that as the owner of our business, that we hold this thing in such high regard that it's so important that they also prioritize available, productive time for this growing vision. And I think as we grow as entrepreneurs and leaders, this will become refined over time, but we can always start with us, right? Make sure that we are putting our best foot forward, making sure that we are showing up to our business in a way that is passionate, that is fueled, that is absolutely clear in direction, so that our team can take their piece of the puzzle and make sure that they are contributing in the way that you see them contributing. I hope that this was helpful and insightful and hopefully a little bit encouraging. I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for joining me today.